Thưa các anh chị và các bạn, như vậy là hai diễn giả anh Carey Chambers và anh Thái Quang Trung đã cho chúng ta những thông tin về hai mảng khác nhau về quản lý tài sản và về đầu tư, đều vừa ngắn gọn, xúc tích mà vẫn rất đầy đủ và giá trị. Thì trước khi chúng ta sẽ gặp lại hai diễn giả cùng với một diễn giả nữa tới từ Hoa Kỳ là Mr. Bradford Stedem, thì Huyền Nga xin phép dành một vài phút để chúng ta nghỉ giải lao, chúng ta có thể chuẩn bị những câu hỏi để bước vào phần tọa đàm bàn tròn trao đổi với ba diễn giả được hào hứng và sôi nổi hơn nữa. Cũng như mời quý vị và các anh chị chúng ta cùng theo dõi một video clip nhỏ giới thiệu về ImmiCa và USHome. Xin mời. Chào mừng các quý anh chị và các bạn, chúng ta quay trở lại tiếp tục với chương trình tọa đàm trực tuyến của chúng ta ngày hôm nay với chủ đề quản lý tài sản và các kênh đầu tư. Và tiếp theo đây, chúng ta sẽ cùng bước vào phần tọa đàm bàn tròn trao đổi trực tuyến giữa 3 diễn giả của chương trình. Anh Carey Chambers CEO của USHome, anh Thái Quang Trung tới từ Quỹ phòng hộ Singapore, và đặc biệt chúng ta có sự tham gia của anh Bradford Stedem, chủ tịch và giám đốc điều hành của Capital United và EB5 United. Và trong phần tọa đàm bàn tròn trao đổi trực tuyến này thì chúng ta sẽ sử dụng ngôn ngữ tiếng Anh, nên quý vị, các anh chị và các bạn, chúng ta mong muốn nghe phần phiên dịch vui lòng chọn và tùy chọn Interpretation và chọn phần English để chúng ta có thể được hỗ trợ phần phiên dịch các anh chị nhé. Và trong phần tọa đàm này, đại diện từ Camry Group, ImmiCa và USHome xin trân trọng giới thiệu giám đốc đầu tư cô Hoàng Diệp Trúc sẽ tham gia moderator điều hành buổi trao đổi trực tiếp ngày hôm nay. Xin mời các diễn giả và xin mời chúng ta cùng bắt đầu ạ.
Xin cảm ơn chị Huyền Nga. Xin chào tất cả các anh chị. Cảm ơn các anh chị đã dành thời gian tham gia buổi tọa đàm trực tuyến Wise Investment hiện nay cùng với Camry Group. Thì chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngay với buổi tọa đàm để giải đáp những cái nội dung mà các anh chị đang quan tâm về vấn đề đầu tư, làm thế nào để chúng ta quản lý tốt danh mục đầu tư của mình nè. Đặc biệt trong cái thời gian khá là thử thách để chúng ta đón chào một cái năm mới, năm 2021, thật là nhiều cái điều thuận lợi, thật là nhiều sự chuẩn bị để chúng ta có được cái sự thành công cao nhất. Thì xin giới thiệu với các anh chị, chúng ta đã được nghe anh Carey và anh Trung Thái chia sẻ rồi đúng không ạ? Một diễn giả nữa tham gia cùng với chúng ta ngày hôm nay đó chính là anh Bradford Stedem, phó chủ tịch của EB5 Capital, và Capital sẽ chia sẻ với chúng ta, sẽ giới thiệu với chúng ta. So, hi, Mr. Brad. Could you please introducing yourself with our clients today? Thank you for joining with us.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning in Vietnam. I wish I could be there in person. You know, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to be traveling there anytime soon from the United States, but I miss Vietnam a lot, so it's at least nice to be here on this video conference. So, I'm Brad Stedem. I'm president of Capital United and EB5 United. Capital United is a U.S. investment advisor registered with the SEC. We've raised over $500 million of foreign capital to invest in U.S. real estate. And we also raise U.S. Capital from U.S. nationals to invest in U.S. real estate, and as well as managing U.S. equity investments for in foreign markets like Vietnam. So we cover the border of cross-border transactions, investing in both the United States from foreigners as well as U.S. individuals, and then we raise capital to invest in foreign markets as well, all for real estate.
It's great. Thank you, Brad. To all panelists, thank you for your valuable time today. To sharing your knowledge, your experience to our clients, to our investors who really want to learn more about how to invest safe and effectively. So we've been in really eventful and challenging year in 2020. And in our mindset, in Camry Group, and also to all of our investors, we always think in challenging, in crisis time, we always find opportunities. So with your experience and like investment managers, could you please share with us about how do you think about the opportunities the investor can see in the market now, like in investment in US, in Canada, and like in Vietnam? So I would like to invite Mr. Brad to share your opinion first.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in any analysis of a real estate investment, it comes down to some core fundamentals that we always go back to, even in times like COVID, or, you know, similarly when we had the U.S. financial crisis in 2009, 2010, in underwriting fundamentals, looking at first the due diligence in deal structuring behind a project, making sure, I mean, key of most all is developer equity. So foreign investors, US investors, any equity investor wants to make sure the developer who is managing the project has sufficient equity invested in the deal to weather the storm, right? So we're seeing this all over the US during COVID, where, you know, whether it's retail, hospitality, certain multifamily assets that are not performing. And when that happens, the amount of leverage you have, which is the amount of money you borrowed from a bank and the interest you have to pay to keep your loan current, is directly proportionate to the amount of times an investment will go bad. So high developer equity is key in looking at something that you want to invest in for the future. Now, in this market, this is when a lot of opportunities are provided as well. So this is, you know, out of crisis comes opportunity. We are still in the COVID crisis, meaning there are a lot of opportunities in US real estate in particular. US real estate will remain a safe haven as we look at, you know, the US Treasury bonds and what's happening to that in comparison to the low yield among other sovereign nations. The US will always be a safe haven, and US real estate will remain a viable alternative in your investment strategy. And so when you're looking at it, you want safeguards for your investor. You want a high net worth developer, right, that has sufficient capital in reserve, whether it's a fund or a developer with other assets, where if they're going through something like completely unprecedented like COVID, they're able to keep paying their interest, keep their loans current, and keep the project moving along. You want checks and balances with whomever you invest with that provide oversight of the developer. And, you know, for if it's a deal under development, you want certain safeguards, like same as a bank would require. You want a completion guarantee to make sure if you invest the capital, the project will end up being completed. You want, as I mentioned before, low leverage. If at all possible, you want to invest in a project that's not overly levered, where if it runs into any sort of headwinds or storm, and, you know, COVID is unprecedented, but this is true for every deal you would ever do as an investor in real estate or US real estate. You want it to have low leverage, high developer equity, and you want to invest in a fiduciary that has a background, experience. There's the key in selecting an investment is whom you're investing in and whom you're investing with, making sure they have their own money and they've done this before. And, you know, you're targeting gateway markets in the United States. They tend to weather these storms better, whether, you know, the coastal cities, whether it's Seattle or Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, on the other side, New York, Miami, or growing markets like, you know, Dallas, Austin, centered around college campuses. So that kind of gives you a little flavor, I think, for what you're looking at trying to invest in US real estate, which now is a good time. Crisis breeds opportunity, and I think going forward, it's a good time to put equity in play, knowing that the existing market is down and it's a chance for appreciation on all levels.
Yeah, it's really great to hear your your opinion. This is really opportunity for everyone who are seeking the safe and effective and really good investment, right, in this time. So people can see around the market and choose the best investment that they like a real estate or stock, whatever, right? So today we will discuss more about what type the investors should invest now, for how much money should they put in. So how about Mr. Carey? How about your opinion about opportunity for investors to invest in Canada market or the US market?
Yeah, I really appreciated a lot of things that Brad had to say. because it is an opportunity and there are opportunities there. But first, I wanted to look at maybe what have we learned from this COVID crisis right now, looking back over the past 6 months or so. Well, we learned that real estate has held up remarkably well. We saw the stock market in the US tank 35% in a very short period of time. Now it came back, but that was a very stressful investment for a lot of people in a very stressful time. Real estate has held up surprisingly well. Some areas, maybe not so much, retail, hospitality, as Brad mentioned. So we learned that. We also learned a little bit more about construction risk. On new projects, there can be delays. Now, COVID was an unseen delay, but yeah, it's going to be that's one of the risks of new projects. It can be delayed. What else did we learn? Well, we learned about some macro trends, some of the longer term trends that are happening right now. What are we seeing? Well, there's a move to more digital infrastructure. Industrial warehouses are more needed. More people are shopping online. We see a trend of people leaving from the large cities, from crowded condos in large cities, maybe to the suburbs, to smaller communities, some of the secondary cities we might call them. So we can look at these trends and start learning about where we might want to invest. But overall, I think one of the themes of the past year in COVID has been how well real estate has really held up.
Yes. So really, really important that we learned about those events, right? Okay, so how about Mr. Trung? How do you think?
Well, before we talk about opportunities, I think we need to understand the risk first. Only after we understand the risk can we talk about the opportunities that can come after COVID. We have to understand that COVID is a massive hit to the world economy. It's like the earth is being hit by a steroid, right? Every single sector is hit, right? I don't think there's any one single sector that is not hit by COVID. So even within real estate, if we're talking about office real estate, demand it's slowing because there's less and less people coming into office, and companies are trying to rationalize their workforce. Retail is obviously being hit. People don't go to shopping malls that often anymore if social distancing is in place. Hospitality obviously hit because we cannot travel. Even residential in some areas is hit, but if the banks are being harsh on mortgage, then people are not having the kind of budgeting power to buy homes, and residential could be hit. So we had to be practically very firm on this, that COVID is hitting everything. So we need to understand the risk first before we understand the opportunities. So once we are mentally prepared for the risk, then we can talk about opportunities. And I personally think that residential real estate, it's from my own personal experience and my own assessment right now, I would prefer residential real estate more than the other types of real estate, especially the types of suburban real estate, like second homes, etc. Those are the trends that I think will be persisting in the world post-COVID. Of course, I'm a stock guy, right? So I cannot not talk about stocks. So in a unprecedented hit like this, the stock market was probably the first channel that was hit, because it's very sentiment driven. And when sentiment is bad, the stock would tank 30-40%, right? It used to tank about 50% from top to bottom in the global financial crisis in 2008. This year I think it tanked about 30-ish%, almost all over the world, right? So most stock markets tanked that much, but has recovered pretty much since then. So it's tricky to invest in stocks now because it's not as obviously undervalued as it used to be, a few months back. So if you want to invest in stocks, you need to start slow. Talk to a trustworthy advisor. If you are not comfortable with the emotional discipline that you have to have in investing in stock, you go with something that is comfortable for you. But again, keep in mind that your liquidity needs have to be met, right? And then when you're considering all the constraints and all the risks, then the opportunities will eventually pop up.
Yes, thank you, all the panelists. So we see that there are always new channels of investment available in the market. Like in Vietnam, we have closed funds, open-end funds, investing in real estate abroad, or even cryptocurrency. So which factors should we consider when investors consider an investment? So if you have a point of 4 important factors, what should you say for people to choose their aspect? So what kind of investment they should be? So Mr. Carey, how do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of points to make there. I think one aspect of your portfolio that always is important is diversification, because if you're too heavily weighted in one particular type of investment, it can be very risky for you. Speaking to Mr. Jung's point, he makes some excellent points about discipline and the behavioral type of investing. I wanted to mention one more point there is what we call FOMO, fear of missing out. It's not a great way to invest. I mean, it's okay to take your time now and think about what's happening with COVID and look into the investments. Don't feel you have to invest because you're afraid of missing out on something. You can take your time, it's all right too, and really know what you're getting into and analyze the risks. Now, another important factor that you want to look at in your portfolio is what's the purpose? Are you building wealth for your own retirement so you can go move to Paris and live a beautiful life in your older years? Or are you trying to build a legacy or trying to build something for generations to come? It might affect how you're looking at your portfolio and the type of investments and the type of term that you're looking at. And just finally, as a 4th point, I would mention again, as Mr. Jung did, about liquidity. What are these investments? If you need money now to operate, can you get out of them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So Brad, wouldn't you want to add anything?
Sure. And, I'll just echo a couple points that Carey mentioned earlier that I fully agree with, as well as Mr. Trong, and that there's always opportunity. So I think as Trong was saying, that residential is a positive swing in the United States and second homes. So personally, we have a deal in Montana, which is a mountain town, a ski resort, and we've seen, and it caters to the very affluent, the highly wealthy. And what we've seen is people in New York, in Boston, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, with everything going on in the US, they've fled to not only the suburbs, but their vacation homes, their mountain towns. And so we have a project in Montana that they've sold $1 billion, $1 billion US of real estate, residential, since the end of March, since COVID started, since the lockdown started. And so what are we doing there? We're doing a second deal there, where we stop, we observe, we see the market changes all the time, and it creates opportunity. So when we saw one of our deals, which we had no idea COVID would happen and that would have such a positive effect on our project in Montana. So what do? We plan another one right behind it with our development partner. So it's recognizing opportunity. Similarly, I mean, Carey, you were talking about Bitcoin earlier, and we've seen, the rise in Bitcoin, and there's a lot of people that believe it's going to continue to rise. So, that's an opportunity to start. If you do that, it's looking at your time horizon, as you mentioned, and dollar cost averaging in. You can slowly add to a position that keeps growing, And if it goes the other way, then you're able, and you still believe in it, you're able to add on the downturn, and because the markets fluctuate. So you look at your time horizon and your investments. So the other big investment I think we're concentrating on is in your country, in Vietnam. So we have been working with in a partner, a development partner that's done a lot of industrial complexes in Vietnam. We've been working on a project there for the last 2 years, and we've stepped up our efforts there to bring it to market as soon as possible. Why? Because the trade winds are blowing away from China with, we're going to have a new president with Biden, but still there's a lot of friction between China and the United States. Who's going to be the beneficiary? Vietnam. And so for us, we've seen this on the wall long before COVID, and we are concentrating on, for our raising US capital to invest in foreign countries, we're concentrating in Vietnam in the specific sector that's industrial that we believe will be the beneficiary of what's going on in the world. Particularly, Vietnam has done an excellent job managing COVID, where the US has done a terrible job. And that, coupled with the trade winds blowing away from China to Vietnam, means that's a sector that we want to target and identify opportunities that we can bring to our investors and invest in. So key among all this, I mentioned earlier, among these 4 points, you're looking at your time horizon, liquidity, as Carey mentioned, track record. What have these people done before? Pre-COVID, during COVID, have they kept their assets? That's vital to us in terms of wanting to place our capital with developers and their experiences. What have they done before? What are they doing now? And can we trust them to continue to deliver positive results in the future? And your methodology in deciding on what to invest in, what are your personal goals, what are your family goals, what are your generational goals, how can you achieve that through your investments? And it's for us, does it make basic sense? So does it make sense to you? Do I believe in this investment? I'm doing a rural deal in Montana. I've seen what they just did during COVID. Does it make sense to do another one? Yes, we've got good returns. Does it make sense to invest in Vietnam? Does it make sense? You have to make those decisions yourself, but you have to have an innate feeling that you hear it. Shouldn't be too complex to you, and if it's too complex, you don't understand it, you shouldn't be investing in it. And you need to believe in yourself that what this opportunity is viable. So that's what I would say.
Yes. We also read an article in Wall Street newspaper that there is family who bought about 14 buildings in New York during the COVID time. So there are investors who are seeking the really good deal in this time. So we still see many opportunity, and the investors can choose really reliable advisors, reliable investment managers for them to give the best advice. So
buy low. This is low time. So you have to believe that things are going to come back. Things are going to get better. They are going to go back to normal. We're going to get over this crisis. And absolutely what you say, long term, but those are long term investors. You can't need the capital potentially, tomorrow or next month. But that's the belief. You pick the right people, that select the right partners, that have the right experience, and you're going to weather the storm and do well.
Yes. So think about tomorrow, right? Think about the future. Everything will be better, right? Okay. So one question from the attendees that they want to diverse their investment portfolio. So to Mr. Trung, that could you please share your opinion, your experience, that how the investors can choose the reliable advisor and the best investment managers for the Vietnamese investors?
Right. I think there's no one size fits all solution to that. If you are already heading to the US, then it's easier for you. Eventually, you'll be in the US and you have access to all the channels available in the US. So, assuming you are in the US now, you can have all the access to all the investment channels that Carey mentioned before, investing in stocks, investing in real estate deals, depending on which deals become available to you, right? I assume that for real estate, it depends on the deals that are being offered to you. So once you are in the US, I would suggest, yes, I agree on investing in the S&P 500. That's a good channel. It's very hard to beat S&P 500. When you invest in S&P 500, you are basically investing in America Inc., right? You're investing in the US economy and hoping for that to deliver you returns. You can also buy the stock under Warren Buffett, which is Berkshire Hathaway. You can look up the ticker, but if you buy Warren Buffett, you're basically buying his ability to allocate capital, not just in the US, but also elsewhere, right? Warren Buffett buys, companies like Apple, Bank of America, etc., etc. Those companies are bulletproof. Have solid business models. They will grow over time. They will bring you capital over time. They are run by very efficient and trustworthy CEOs. So that's one way to invest, right? I think their stock price, it's not clearly overvalued to me, right? So that's one idea to invest in when assuming you are going into the US. If you're in Vietnam, that's gonna take you a few steps to do. When you're in Vietnam and we're faced with COVID now, we cannot travel. It's gonna take you some time to be a global investor where you can invest in channels overseas. I would suggest looking at a bridge. You're now sitting in Vietnam and you want to invest in the US. It's a long way, right? Why don't you start with somewhere in between? And you can ask ImmiCa for help, right? In the region, for example, Singapore is a good connecting hub between you being here in Vietnam and what you want to do in the US in terms of investment. When COVID is over, you can travel to Singapore. You can try and have some talk with brokerage firms in Singapore, and then you can invest in Singapore, and then from Singapore you can invest in the US. That's one way to look at it. So there's no short answer for this, right? There's no short answer for this. If you ask me, how do I invest? How do I arrive at a diversified investment portfolio, including those investment opportunities in the US? There's not going to be a short answer to that.
Yeah, I see. So should trust the advisor, right? And choose the reliable advisor, like not only the advisor, but also a friend.
I cannot name names, right? I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not going to say, okay, this advisor is trustworthy, that advisor is not trustworthy. I'm not going to say that. You had to really do your homework, and you didn't really not here talk to the advisor. The advisor has to be able to listen to you. Advisors that are, pushing you too hard, obviously are not going to look very, very trustworthy. So that's up to you. I cannot give you names.
I see. Yes, and then at KêNH Group we have 12 years experience in helping investors to invest in the US, and also in investment we have the mindset, right? Should not put all eggs into a basket, right? And the Vietnamese investor, they have the right to invest in the US, in Canada, or even in Singapore, right? So they don't need a green card to make an investment or buy houses, especially in the US. So our investors are not only the green card holders of the US, they are Vietnamese investors. They have questions that they put into the chat, right? That at $1 million, how should I start to diverse my investment into the US? So this question I wanna give to Mr. Carey.
Well, starting with $1 million, part of it is you want to know what kind of investments you're most comfortable with. You know, some people, if they're not comfortable investing in the stock market, you don't have to. It's okay. You know, you can, if you don't sleep well at night, watching your stocks go up and down, then maybe that's not the right investment for you. So if you want to buy, if you're most comfortable with real estate, well, I would suggest that with $1 million, I don't know if you can diversify that much with $1 million, I guess is what I'm going to say. You could, I mean, you could buy, if you want to go into residential real estate, which has been particularly strong in the US lately, you could invest in different markets. Now you run into a whole bunch of other difficulties in that managing properties in different cities can be a little bit complicated too. And I want to mention as well, like, you know, geographic diversification of a real estate portfolio is good as well. You can invest something in Singapore, something in Vietnam, something in the US as well. There's also another way to diversify your portfolio. So I guess that's kind of, it's going to really depend on the person, what they're most comfortable with. Are you comfortable with residential real estate? Are you comfortable with commercial real estate? Are you okay with a new construction project where your funds could be tied up for 3, 5, 7 years? So it's really going to depend a lot on the individual investor. And just one final point I wanted to make as well, because I think people might be curious. In the US, if you do get the services of a wealth manager in the US, you're going to pay anywhere from 1 to about 2.5% of your portfolio annually. That's roughly the cost, depending on the size of the portfolio. The larger amount of money you allocate to the wealth manager, the lower the fee will be, closer to the 1% range.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Carey. To Brad, so we really happy to hear that the U.S. government ready to put thousands of billion dollars, right, to save the economy in the U.S. So that's a good point to an investor feel safe that the market is still stable. So how do you think for the Vietnamese investors, which factors should them create their investment portfolio, especially in the US, for example, with $1 million?
Sure. So we'll start with the $1 million and what I would say to a friend. Okay, so a friend has $1 million, however they came into it, if they've been saving their own money and they want to start investing, they have their own house already, and they want to try to put their money to work. So the first thing I would ask is, you know, what are your goals? Is it long-term capital appreciation or current income? Those are two separate goals. Current income means you want to invest in it and keep getting a check every month and get paid current income from your investment. So that could be in a REIT, a real estate investment trust that, you know, pays dividends out, or if you're investing in a single asset, it's a cash flowing asset, which is less risky. It's already built. It's fully leased, or hopefully fully leased. Or it provides a value add opportunity where it's not leased, and the developer is going to come in and make some changes and has a business plan and a strategy to then raise rents and increase. But what are your goals, right? Are you willing to not take any money for a couple of years, as Carey was just saying, while something gets built, and then you have further chance of capital appreciation? Or do you want the current income to help provide, you know, support for your lifestyle and pay for your bills and your family's bills? What are your goals? I think that's the first thing. What's the time horizon for your investment? So if I'm speaking to any investor, it's, are you willing to keep this, you know, just out for 3 to 5 years while something gets built and stabilized, or do you might you need the capital back? So if you're doing a new construction, you're not going to have the ability to get the capital back. If you do more of a liquid investment, like a real estate investment trust or a stock that invests in real estate, or, you know, an index fund that's invested in real estate, then that provides for liquidity where you can get current income as well as sell it if you need it. So your goals, your time horizon, the liquidity, and then in your own mind, your diversification. So I agree with Carey, $1 million is not, it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of money for a lot of people to have saved. But in terms of making an investment in real estate, it's not necessarily a lot of money. And so if you want to diversify, you're not going to probably choose something with a minimal capital investment. Now, a lot of times you're able to invest, and I know what ImmiCa has done very successfully, which I would recommend to investors, is they don't need to put in $1 million in one investment. ImmiCa is able to syndicate projects, which I like. So if you are able to syndicate a project, you can put 50,000 or 100,000 or 25,000 or whatever the minimum amount is in a few different projects to allow you to diversify, spread your risk across. And also it comes down to everything I've been saying before. Whom are you investing with? What is their experience? What is their leverage? What is the equity they're investing in themselves? And when you take a syndicated deal where you're looking for retail investors investing in, you know, a developer with a lot of experience looking for a smaller investment amount, then you can diversify that $1 million into a few different assets, and spread the risk around, and you know, and choose partners that a trusted advisor like ImmiCa has been able to source these opportunities that are able to provide to retail investors. And they can look and see, oh, there are other Vietnamese investors that have done the same thing and got decent 18, 20, 22%, whatever returns, and I can hope for the same. So that'd be my opinion.
Yes, great advice. Thank you, Brad. So we still have 3 another questions from the attendees. So I would like to ask Mr. Trung that what do you think about the best wealth management or investment management models that the safest and most effective for investors?
I'm afraid I don't have an answer to this. There's no best model. There's only an optimal solution for each and every individual investor, because, you know, the investors have very different needs and different backgrounds. So I don't have an answer to which model is best. But what I can say is, you know, there's maybe a best approach in going out and picking wealth management advisors or doing investment yourself. And the approach would be, I would say, let's start with not being afraid of missing opportunities. Do not be afraid of missing opportunities. And then eventually you'll come to picking the right wealth management advisor or doing the investments you know, yourself. Obviously, there are a lot of names, very, very well-known names in wealth management. You know, UBS, Julius Baer, etc., etc. In Singapore is a very close country to Vietnam, where you can just hop on a plane and fly there for 1 or 2 hours, and you'll be able to meet with a lot of well-known wealth management firms, right? If you go to the US, you will have a lot more options, obviously, right? And there'll be a lot of options for you to choose from. And then you can have all the time in the world to do research and see for yourself which one is best for you to work with. Do not be afraid of missing opportunities. you know, investment is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't invest now so that you can quickly catch up with some opportunities that the next guy on the street or the guy next door is catching up. If your neighbor is making millions of dollars just because he's investing in cryptocurrency or this channel or that channel, good for him. You know, don't go and chase things like that. You know, that's what I can say. So I don't have an answer to what the best model is, but the best approach is do not be afraid of missing opportunities, right? You take small steps one at a time every day, and then you find out for yourself what you want to do with your $1 million, right? If I have $1 million now, if somebody comes to me and say, I have $1 million, what should I do? Sorry, I don't have an answer, because you know, there's no short answer to that. I had to sit down with you and find out what you need, right?
It depends on the demands and the goals of the investor want to do, right?
The point is, take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah. Okay. So one question from the attendee to Mr. Carey. Next year, we are going to the US to live. So I wonder, should I invest now in stock or real estate? So which one is the safest with the high liquidity? Should we invest?
Okay, well, you know, it's hard to predict the future and what's going to happen, especially with the stock market recently. Ever since COVID hit, the US stock market has felt more like gambling than investing. It's just been very, very crazy. The prices are up and down based on the election, the COVID, the number of cases. Is a vaccine coming? Is it not? It's been a bit of a tricky place to invest right now. As far as liquidity goes, the stock market obviously has greater liquidity. If you buy a well-traded stock, you can be in and out of it in just seconds, microseconds. So that's where you have the greater liquidity. Real estate, you know, it's going to take a little while to sell, the process of buying, that whole process. Now, it depends as well on what are you looking at as far as residential real estate. Is this going to be a part of your life, or is it just an investment? Are you comfortable going in as a limited partner in a private equity type arrangement? You can make a lot of money off of that. If you're the type of person who's an accredited investor, you have some wealth, those are very good opportunities. But is that one that's right for you? Or is it maybe just better to buy a vacation home for yourself for now, enjoy it, and then sell it later? So these are some of the factors I think that you want to look at when you're looking at comparing stocks to real estate. And you know, it's okay to do both as well. I do.
Yes. We know that you and your family invest a lot in the US with diverse investment types. So thank you for your sharing. And one of the really interesting questions, that how the election result affect to the economy globally and to the investor. They are investing in the real estate investment in the US. To Mr. Brad.
Well, that's a great question. And we had an interesting result, right? So we had Biden, we think, win, but the Senate remained Republican. And in fact, in the House, Republicans gained a few seats from the Democrats. So, but not control. So what that means, in my opinion, I think it's good for everything. It's good for the U.S. economy. There's checks and balances that we're not going to have too much stimulus where it's a few $1 billion, where, you know, some Americans feel that that's too much money to keep spending. There's checks and balances because the Senate can override. So you know, I think that this situation, and I think this is what the market has expected. This is what's been built up. The market has been, you know, going up since the election, and they've known that the Senate is going to remain Republican, to put some checks and balances in from the liberal Democrat agenda. And I think that's good. It's good for the stock market. It's good for the housing market. And, you know, for as Carey was saying, I mean, for a Vietnamese investor who's moving to the U.S., the other thing to remember about U.S. real estate is if it's your home, then you can use leverage. So you only put 20% equity down. You can borrow 80% at very, very low rates in the United States, which provides, you know, when it appreciates at all, the equity gets all the appreciation. So, you know, if you're moving to the U.S., I would say first buy your own house before you start speculating in other risky investments. Make sure your house is secure. You own your own home. And in the long term, U.S. real estate, residential real estate has gone up. It's you know, particularly in any good market, U.S. residential real estate continues to go up. So Vietnamese investors moving to the U.S. with $1 million, you buy your house first. But I think the election results are very good for America and setting us on par for continued growth in 21, but with a check and balance. And so, you know, I'm pleased with the results. So we'll see what happens.
Yes. Let's see. Yeah, still see, right? Thank you, Brad. So we still think that for whatever, for Mr. Biden or Trump, right? U.S. is U.S. They are still powerful, right? The leading country in the world. So we still see bright side of any policy may have upcoming next year. So we still keep our heart, our brain, right, our mindset really positive, so we can make a good investment for the family, for the better future in Vietnam, in the US, in Canada, in Singapore, and all over the world. So we would like to thank you to all panelists for really interesting panel today, really informative to the investors. And yes, we had the time to end, and I would like to back to the MC, to Mr. Hỳnh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Xin cảm ơn Hoàng Diệp Trúc, xin cảm ơn chị Hoàng Diệp Trúc, xin cảm ơn các diễn giả tham gia của chúng ta ngày hôm nay, Mr. Carey Chambers, Mr. Bradford Stedem và anh Mr. Thái Quang Trung. Rất cảm ơn tất cả những chia sẻ, những kiến thức, những thông tin mà các diễn giả đã trao đổi, đã dành thời gian buổi sáng thứ Bảy với chúng ta, cũng như là đưa ra những đánh giá, những nhận định mà Huyền Nga tin rằng rất có giá trị cho các anh chị nhà đầu tư khi chúng ta đang ở trong một giai đoạn vô cùng đặc biệt như hiện nay, đúng không ạ? Và như vậy thì có thể nói là buổi tọa đàm trực tuyến đầu tiên trong chuỗi chương trình cung cấp thông tin về đầu tư và tài chính Wise Investment 2020 được tổ chức bởi Carey Group thì xin được khép lại tại đây. Và một lần nữa chúng ta đã được gặp gỡ, đã được trao đổi những thông tin rất là tuyệt vời từ các diễn giả hàng đầu và rất là tâm huyết tới từ nhiều nơi trên thế giới. Và Huyền Nga hy vọng rằng chúng ta đã có những thời gian giá trị, có ý nghĩa trong buổi sáng thứ Bảy cuối tuần ngày hôm nay. Mong rằng các anh chị chúng ta hãy phản hồi nhiều hơn nữa với Carey Group thông qua ImmiCa và USHome để chúng tôi có thể thường xuyên có những nội dung có giá trị, có ý nghĩa và hỗ trợ được cho cộng đồng một cách tối đa. Và đừng quên là tham dự và thường xuyên theo dõi những thông tin trên Facebook ImmiCa, Facebook USHome để chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục theo dõi những chuỗi chương trình, những hội thảo về tư vấn đầu tư định cư và tư vấn bất động sản tại Hoa Kỳ trên các kênh của ImmiCa và USHome. Thưa các anh chị, một lần nữa xin cảm ơn sự hiện diện, sự tham gia của các diễn giả ngày hôm nay. Cảm ơn sự hiện diện và tham gia của tất cả quý anh chị nhà đầu tư và các bạn. Và xin hẹn gặp lại tất cả chúng ta trong chương trình tọa đàm trực tuyến tiếp theo của chuỗi Wise Investment 2020. Và sau buổi ngày hôm nay, nếu các quý anh chị, các nhà đầu tư chúng ta mong muốn tìm hiểu thêm những cơ hội đầu tư tại Hoa Kỳ như là chương trình đầu tư định cư Mỹ IMMI hoặc là đầu tư bất động sản tại Hoa Kỳ thì hãy theo dõi các hội thảo hàng tuần của ImmiCa và USHome nha các anh chị. Xin chân thành cảm ơn.